In some ways, the United States is a whole different world, totally different from every other place. So let's take a look at what's normal there that baffles people from the outside. One of the first things a foreigner notices when entering the country is flags. American flags everywhere. On buildings like schools and houses, and on clothes like shorts, t-shirts, you name it. Throughout history, Americans have changed 27 flags. The current American flag was only adopted in 1960 and is so far the longest-lasting flag of the country. It wasn't created by the authorities, though. In 1958, there was a contest for a design of the new American flag, and the winning flag was made by a 17-year-old high school student from Ohio. The reason why Americans love their flag so much is national pride. But why not so many countries do the same? Well, some countries avoid displaying them for historical reasons. Other countries only raise the flag on special occasions to highlight the importance of the event. Still, some countries display their flag as often as Americans do. In Denmark, people are quite proud of their flag too. They decorate the winter holiday tree and birthday cakes with them, and you can always find stickers with Danish flags, red and white candles, and other goodies with the flag in a grocery store. People in Sweden are also very much into their flag and have flagpoles everywhere. Now, let's go to a restaurant, shall we? Many things there are very specific to the States. Like, for example, tons of ice in every drink. Turns out there is some history to this preference. America has always had a lot of ice as a resource, since New England's lakes and rivers have a lot of those during winter. Centuries ago, before refrigerators and other helpful cooling machines, that kind of cold resource was very valuable, and the States started exporting ice to other parts of the world. And also, of course, consuming it themselves. They started to put ice in their hot drinks, in contrast to the British, who were always drinking their beverages hot. The ice in the drinks has become an American thing, and it was also considered a rich person's drink. Yep, the ice would also show a person's status. Of course, with time, when refrigerators appeared, ice became available to everyone, and Americans started to add it to their drinks commonly. The habit remained, but also, ice drinks are very refreshing, which is especially important in the hot south of the country. But if you come from abroad and don't want your drink freezing cold, always specify it to the waiter. The next striking thing is the huge portions that are served, and there is a reason for that too. It wasn't always like this, but in the second half of the last century, due to pesticides and fertilizers, farmers started to be able to grow more food than they used to. The government caught on, subsidizing them to grow even more food. So, the amount of available food increased. Over time, companies started to increase the sizes of their portions. Why serve less food and get less money if you can serve a bit more and also charge more? That's good for business, and it's a win-win. Customers get more food for just a little bit more money. So, larger portions stuck. Okay, now we need to take a little toilet break. And, surprisingly, there are a lot of foreigners who find American toilets weird. First, what's up with those huge gaps in bathroom stalls? Let's start with the more obvious part, gaps on the bottom of the doors. Those are quite common, even outside the US, and they serve several purposes. First, you can see if there's a person inside without trying to break into an occupied stall. Second, it provides some ventilation and makes it easier to clean the floor in the bathrooms. The gaps on the sides are more questionable. Of course, people on the outside can't see everything going on behind the door, but still, there's not much privacy whatsoever. In most other countries, the gaps are either negligible or non-existent. So what's up with them in America? I did some research. Some sources say that since every inch of material is expensive, wide gaps are made to reduce the costs of bathroom stalls. Other sources say that when people feel exposed like this, they have fewer incentives to do something illegal in public bathrooms. Next observation, American toilets have way more water in their bowls in comparison to, for example, European ones. The reason is that those types of toilets use different flashing systems, and an American one needs more water to flush effectively. In many countries, especially in Asia, most bathrooms have bidets, which are used for after-toilet cleaning, and tourists don't understand why Americans wouldn't adopt those too. After all, if you step in mud, you'll go and wash your foot instead of just wiping it off with a tissue. The same logic works here. Also, it reduces toilet paper usage. So it's more sustainable and it's environmentally friendly. Some say there's a strong stigma in America around bidets that is extremely hard to overcome. Others say that toilets in the US don't have enough room to install a bidet. So they don't have those, especially if there are other well-known ways. Before we leave the restaurant, we need to tip the waiter. Tipping in the United States is way more common than in most other countries. You're expected to tip any service person who helped you with something. While some kind of tipping exists in some other countries, the extent of it is smaller. And there are also countries like Japan and Denmark where tipping isn't a thing at all. Those countries have minimum wage laws that dictate decent wages employers must pay their workers. This way, the need to pay money to service stuff isn't pushed onto the customers. By the way, here's one more fact about the prices. Probably the craziest thing in the States tourists have to adapt to are prices in stores. The tax isn't included into the displayed price and is added on top while checking out. So people who are short on money can't pre-calculate the price they will have to pay to make sure that they have enough money. But really, why is it so? The main reason behind such a weird policy is transparency. This way, taxpayers know how much tax they pay and can resist raising the tax rate in case it comes on the national agenda. Also, it allows buyers to compare the costs of products across states fairly, since tax rates may differ. So, if the tax isn't included, you compare the actual bread costs between Alabama and Alaska, for example. In some places in America, it's not very easy to get around unless you travel by car. In some regions, there's often no sidewalk taking you to the closest convenience store, or a crosswalk, allowing you to cross the road right in front of the store. The main reason for that is probably the fact that the United States is a big country with vast lands and everything is spread out. Neighborhoods can be scattered around, wide suburban territories quite far away from one another, so that's already far from being walking distance, and sidewalks aren't needed because, yes, no one's walking. Studies show that Spanish or Germans walk at least twice as much as Americans, but in those countries, everything is way closer. And last and not least, you guessed it, the imperial system. It's based on the human body. A foot is an average foot size of a person, so you might think it's quite intuitive for anyone. Well, no. Foreigners are incredibly confused with feet, inches, gallons, and Fahrenheits, and tend to convert it all to the familiar metric system. Well, in this sense, the British are even more confusing. Those guys use both imperial and metric systems. For height, it's mostly feet and inches, but for weight, kilograms. Great Britain used to have the imperial system, but later they were forced to switch to the metric system. So now they're using a combination, whatever helps to be more precise.
Hey, you've heard of Stonehenge? Of course you have. Big rocks mysteriously mounted in circles on a plain in England by, somebody. But what if England's Stonehenge is only a replica of another monument, and its builders just crossed the Atlantic and copied what someone had already done elsewhere? Well, it turns out researchers found another Stonehenge underneath the waters of Lake Michigan. This lake is a hotspot for woo-woo unexplained things. A bunch of disappearances, plane crashes, and now this, an ancient underwater monument that looks strangely enough like Stonehenge. We couldn't help ourselves and needed to dive deep into this story. A ring of massive stones, arranged in a way that felt all too familiar. They saw two circles, an outer one and an inner one, sitting 40 feet below the surface. But this wasn't just a random pile of rocks. These stones had been placed there purposefully by human hands. And by doing some further research, they discovered that they were staring at a structure that's over 9,000 years old. Think about it. This Stonehenge beneath Lake Michigan predates the pyramids. It predates Stonehenge itself by about 4,000 years. All of this information was enough to startle scientists at Northwestern Michigan University. But that was before they found this out. One of the stones had a carving, a faint but clear petroglyph of a mastodon. Mastodons kind of look like the ancestors to our modern-day elephants, but they have been extinct on planet Earth since 10,000 years ago. So, whoever built this underwater Stonehenge needed to be alive at the same time these creatures roamed our planet. This discovery raised many questions among scientists. I mean, why on earth would they go through all this trouble to lay rocks at the bottom of a lake? Well, first things first. Scientists believe that Lake Michigan had much less water back then than it does now. Second, it could have something to do with ancestral practices of First Nation people. There's one theory from a professor of the University of Michigan. He suggested that the stones formed a kind of prehistoric hunting trap. He believes that early hunters used the circular formation as a drive lane to herd large animals like the mastodons from the rock carvings we were just talking about. Once they got these huge animals into a tighter circle, they could be more easily hunted. But not everyone's convinced by this theory. Some believe the circle probably had a deeper spiritual purpose. According to local Native American tribes, like the Anishinaabe, stones are more than just rocks. They're living beings. They hold spiritual energy and represent a connection to the earth and all living creatures. An elder from the Anishinaabe community even suggested that these stones are sacred, placed there by their ancestors to honor the land and its creatures. Scientists are trying to study the stone formation in depth, like about 40 feet. But that's the problem, actually. The fact that it's underwater makes it super difficult, since they don't have the best technology. Traditional archaeological tools don't work as well when everything is submerged, but promising new technologies like stereophotogrammetry, which literally means making 3D models of a site, are helping scientists study the stone circle more closely. Still, research is slow and expensive, so it's hard to know when this mystery will come to a close. As we said, Lake Michigan is a hot spot for unexplained phenomena. Its lakebed is filled with shipwrecks, such as the Thomas Hume, a sturdy American schooner. It also collects debris from airplanes that have suddenly gone missing while flying the area, such as Northwest Airlines Flight 2501 that disappeared in the 1950s. Some people even call the area the Lake Michigan Triangle, suggesting paranormal activities like what happens in the Bermuda Triangle might be going on. The lake spans over 22,000 square miles, which means it's almost two-thirds the size of the country of Ireland. In 2024, scientists were able to access another one of Lake Michigan's mysteries, the wreck of the Margaret A. Muir schooner. This 130-foot-long sailing ship sank over 130 years ago. The discovery was announced just recently by the Wisconsin Underwater Archaeological Association, the WUAA, whose team found the shipwreck sitting 50 feet below the surface just off the shores of Algoma, Wisconsin. Built in 1872, the Margaret A. Muir was a three-masted schooner built to carry heavy cargo across the Great Lakes. Her final voyage started out as a routine trip. Loaded with bulk salt, the ship left Bay City, Michigan, heading for South Chicago, Illinois. But on September 30th, 1893, things took a bad turn. Just as the Muir approached the town of Annapolis, now known as Algoma, a sudden storm hit. The ship began taking on water fast. The captain of the boat ordered his crew to abandon ship, and thankfully, they all made it to shore safely. For more than a century, the wreck sat undisturbed on the lake bed, its location a mystery. But thanks to a combination of historical research and high-resolution sonar, WUAA searchers finally found her in May of last year. The wreck is remarkably well preserved, with parts of the deck and gear still visible. Well, just a few lakes over to the left, researchers uncovered another impressive thing. At the bottom of Lake Mendota, near Madison, Wisconsin, researchers found 11 ancient canoes. They believe the oldest of the canoes dates all the way back to 2500 BCE. Now, if you don't get why that's important, it's because you're thinking with today's head. If in a classic Midwest highway you see a bunch of pickups, then back in the ancient days you see only canoes. They were the main mode of transportation for indigenous cultures. They were used to fish in deep waters, trade goods, and travel long distances. The reason why scientists were so excited with its discovery is because they had never found any proof of what canoes were being used for in this region back then. And to understand the local cultures that inhabited the area during this time period, they needed to have some information on that. This exciting discovery was announced by the Wisconsin Historical Society in May 2024. The first canoe, which they believe is around 1,200 years old, was pulled from the lake in 2021. Then a second one was dug up in 2022. And now divers have found at least 11 more canoes along what would have been an ancient shoreline, long since submerged. One theory is that these canoes were intentionally sunk to keep them from freezing or warping in winter. It's possible people stored them in the same spot for generations. Or maybe this is just a small part of a much bigger settlement. Historians do believe there could be an ancient village hidden under the water of the lake. Divers have already found stone tools, like net sinkers used for fishing, but the village itself hasn't been located yet. Truth is, while the Great Lakes often steal all the thunder, scientists point out that smaller lakes like Mendota have stories too. The Wisconsin Historical Society is working closely with Native nations to piece together more about the lake's history. You'll need to believe me when I say there is a third Stonehenge, all the way under the waters of Lake Constance, Switzerland. I mean, think of it like Stonehenge's cousin. Archaeologists began to discover this back in 2015, when they found a line of 170 man-made stone cairns under the lake. Scientists say this was most likely the work of several villages, and that the cairn site was probably used for some collective purpose because, well, the formations are huge. Some of them are several dozen feet wide, and they can build up to 6 feet. The most amazing discovery so far is that the site dates back to around 5,500 years ago. So around the time the original Stonehenge was being built. Some of the facts that link them together are their construction dates, as well as the distinct characteristic of stone monuments built in a circular format. Scientists don't know much about this site yet, but hey, I see a pattern manifested all over the world, don't you?
Some mistakes have the power to change the course of history. One such story has to do with an old, boring key that could have saved the Titanic from its infamous demise. The key belonged to the crow's nest locker that housed binoculars, which could have helped the lookouts spot the iceberg sooner. There's more. The key wasn't even on board the ship when it set sail. The second officer took it with him when he was taken off the ship at the last minute. As the story goes, the officer forgot to hand the key over to his replacement in his hurry to disembark. So, when the lookouts were in desperate need of binoculars, they were out of luck. One of the lookouts, named Fred Fleet, even testified that if they had had binoculars, they would have spotted the iceberg in time to avoid it. And when asked how much sooner, Fleet replied, "Enough to get out of the way." In 2015, some auctioneers got their hands on Blair's key and presented it as one of the most important artifacts from the Titanic. They truly believed it could have saved the ship. Blair kept the key as a souvenir and passed it down to his daughter, Nancy. At one point, it was up for auction with a price tag of over $80,000. Blair himself was quite the hero, it seems. A year after the Titanic disaster, he was awarded a gallantry medal for saving a crewman who had fallen overboard while he had been on board the liner Majestic. He may have forgotten a key, but he sure didn't forget to be a hero when it counted. This next story is both funny and tragic. It's about NASA's lost $125 million Mars Climate Orbiter. The spacecraft engineers failed to convert from English to metric measurements before the craft was launched, and as a result, they lost it. The navigation team at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory used the metric system of millimeters and meters, while Lockheed Martin Astronautics in Denver used the English system of inches, feet, and pounds. JPL engineers mistook acceleration readings measured in English units of pound-seconds for a metric measure of force called Newton-seconds. What's worse is that none of JPL's quality control procedures caught the error in the 9 months it took the spacecraft to make its 461 million-mile flight to Mars. That's a long time to be lost in translation, don't you think? The miscalculations were enough to throw the spacecraft so far off track that it flew too deeply into the Martian atmosphere and was destroyed when it entered its initial orbit around Mars. It's embarrassing to lose a spacecraft to such a simple math error. And it's hard to think of another example of such a large loss due to English versus metric confusion. Ever heard about the mathematical mistake that led to the discovery of the New World? Spoiler alert, it involves a guy named Christopher Columbus and a really big globe. Back in 1492, Columbus set sail from Spain with a mission to find a new trade route to Asia. He was convinced that he was less than 3,000 miles away from Japan, and just a bit more sailing would get him to the Indies with all their tasty spices. The only problem was that Columbus was a bit off in his calculations, like way off. He made a mistake in estimating the size of the globe, which led him to believe that Earth was far smaller than it actually is. Now I know what you're thinking. Wasn't Columbus afraid that he would fall off the edge of the world? Contrary to popular myth, Columbus and his crew knew the Earth was a globe, just like the ancient Greeks did 2 millennia earlier. They weren't worried about falling off the edge, but rather about the size of the ocean they planned on crossing. And to make matters worse, Columbus had no idea that an unknown landmass existed between Spain and Asia. After weeks at sea, Columbus finally reached the Caribbean. He believed that he had landed on the outskirts of Asia, and so named the islands the West Indies. He went on to explore the Caribbean and the northern coast of South America. But here's where things get really interesting. Even though Columbus insisted until his last day that he had reached Asia, another Italian explorer named Amerigo Vespucci mapped the eastern shore of South America down to Brazil and proved conclusively that Columbus had actually discovered a whole new world. A German mapmaker saw Amerigo's maps and labeled the new landmass America after him. And since his maps were super popular at the time, the name stuck. One man named Alexander Fleming stumbled upon one of the most significant medical discoveries of all time by accident. At one point in his career, Fleming observed the demise of many people from uncontrollable infections. Antiseptics were used to fight this, but they often did more harm than good. In 1922, while he had a cold himself, Fleming transferred some of his, nasal discharge to a petri dish and left it on his cluttered desk. When he finally examined it weeks later, he found that an enzyme had some antimicrobial properties. It wasn't until 1928, when Fleming left an uncovered petri dish next to an open window, that he stumbled upon the discovery that would change the world. The dish became contaminated with fungus spores. and when he examined them under the microscope, Fleming discovered that the bacteria near the fungus were dying. He managed to isolate the fungus and found that it was effective against numerous things that caused diseases, and thus penicillin was discovered. As Fleming himself put it, "I did not discover penicillin. Nature did that. I only discovered it by accident." Talk about a lucky break. In the early 1520s, the east coast of the United States of America was a big mystery waiting to be solved. The Spanish found Florida, and the English and Portuguese found Newfoundland, but the area in between was like a blank spot on the map. France decided to take action and sent an expedition to explore the area. They chose a guy called Giovanni da Verrazzano to lead the trip. For this expedition, he got 4 ships. Unfortunately, 2 of them were shipwrecked, and a third one went home after doing some other business on the Spanish coast. Only the flagship, La Dauphine, crossed the Atlantic with Verrazzano and his 50-man crew. Verrazzano set sail from Madeira and landed at Cape Fear. From there, he sailed south, but got a little scared of running into the Spanish, so he returned somewhere north of Charleston. He anchored not far from his original landing spot, but unlike other explorers, he preferred to anchor well out at sea. He did send a boat to the shore, and he met the natives. They were described as wearing just some animal skins covering their bodies and garlands of bird feathers. As Verrazzano sailed along the coast, he reached the outer banks of North Carolina. He thought that the waters he discovered were those of the Pacific. In reality, what he'd stumbled upon was the Pamlico Sound. He thought that North America was just a long, extremely narrow strip of land. This mistake led mapmakers to show North America as almost completely divided in two. Moving on, Verrazzano reached a beautiful place that he called Arcadia, probably Kitty Hawk, North Carolina. Sailing further north, he missed the entrances to Chesapeake and Delaware Bays because he kept quite far from the coast until New Jersey. Then, the moment we've all been waiting for, Verrazzano discovered New York Harbor, and he anchored in the Narrows. Later, it was named after him, and now it is spanned by the Verrazzano Narrows Bridge. Once Verrazzano's sea appeared on the map, it became widely accepted and impacted loads of future explorers. For example, Henry Hudson went looking for a passage to the Pacific in the middle latitudes of the continent. But, as it turns out, the Englishman never did find the Pacific Ocean anywhere near Virginia. And the cartographic myth eventually faded away. It's funny to think about how a mistaken belief could have such an impact on history.
This area might just be the most important spot in America right now, as it is worth over $1 trillion. There's something incredibly valuable hidden right here at Thacker Pass, and it is going to shake things up, not just in Nevada, but in the US economy and its global relations. The McDermott Caldera is a massive area, about 28 miles long by 22 miles wide, stretching across northern Nevada and southern Oregon. It's in Humboldt County, a quiet, rural place with just one main city that's going to change a lot in the next 5 to 10 years. That's because they found white gold there. We're talking about lithium. And to explain why this metal is so important, we need a scale. On one side, we place a chunk of lithium, and on the other, an apple. What do you think will happen? If both have the same volume, the scale is going to tip toward the apple. That's because lithium is super light. Its density is about 0.3 ounces per cubic inch, which makes it the lightest solid you can find at room temperature. Lithium is also extremely reactive. That means it combines with other elements very easily, and it can catch fire just as easily. Mix it with water, fire. Expose it to air, yep, fire again. But when you combine its lightness with its high reactivity, you get a material that's perfect for batteries, like the one powering your smartphone, laptop, or even your electric car.
Nevada's been hiding this treasure for about 16 million years. The McDermott caldera used to be a volcanic hotspot, spewing molten rock and creating a huge lake filled with mineral-rich waters. Over time, that lake dried up, leaving behind thick layers of clay loaded with lithium. Right now, Thacker Pass Mine is sitting on one of the biggest untapped lithium reserves in the world, worth about $1.5 trillion. If everything goes as planned, they expect it to produce about 40,000 tons of high-quality lithium a year. And that's enough to make batteries for up to 800,000 electric cars. Like I mentioned earlier, this metal is the backbone of modern batteries. And with the world racing toward green energy, the demand for lithium is skyrocketing. Since 2020, its price has gone up more than 10 times, making it the most expensive battery metal in the world. That means it's way more expensive than magnesium, nickel, cobalt, and other materials used in rechargeable batteries. Right now, we're using about 1.16 million tons of lithium per year, and roughly 85% of it goes into making batteries, mostly for cars. Between 2030 and 2040, experts think we will need to double the money we're putting into production, from $94 billion to $188 billion. At the same time, investment in batteries will jump by over 200%, reaching $686 billion. Finally, by 2050, the demand for lithium is expected to be more than 10 times higher than what we're producing now. Sorry, I know that's a lot of numbers, but I just want to show how important Thacker Pass will be for the whole world. This mine is going to be key to keeping everything running. I mean, literally, since most of the future demand will be for things like cars, electric bikes, scooters, and renewable energy storage. Nevada could also be the epicenter of a global energy revolution, with the US aiming to cut pollution by 50% by 2030. A big part of that is replacing gas-powered vehicles with electric ones. And to make that happen, America is going to need a whole lot more lithium than it's producing right now. Nowadays, most of the metal used in the United States come from countries like Chile and Argentina. So if America wants to be a leader in this market, it really needs to invest more and more in projects like Thacker Pass. But there's another challenge. Finding lithium in a mine is one thing, but refining it is another story. Just like diamonds are carefully cut and shaped to bring out their sparkle and sold in rings and necklaces, something similar needs to be done with lithium. The raw material that comes from the mines has to be refined into a pure form that can actually be used in things like batteries. And China pretty much dominates this part of the market, and they're responsible for about 75% of global lithium-ion battery production. In other words, it doesn't matter if a country finds this powerful metal on its land, it will probably still need China to help refine it. So, the US is eager to strengthen its supply chain. In fact, they're so excited about this possibility that authorities have invested over $2 billion in loans into the Nevada project. Because of that, Thacker Pass could make the US a leader in lithium production worldwide. If their estimates are right, the McDermott caldera could hold nearly half of the world's known lithium reserves. It would almost double the reserves found in Bolivia's salt flats, for example, which used to hold the record for the world's largest deposit. This discovery is about to change Humboldt County for good. Those quiet streets surrounded by nature will never feel the same again. The mine will need about 2,000 workers, who will probably move there from other cities. Those workers will need houses, hospitals, schools for their kids, and all the necessary services. Do you see how it's like a ripple effect? For every person hired to work on the project during construction, 6 more people will get hired in the state to support them. Thacker Pass is also going to have a huge impact on the economy, not just in Nevada, but all across the country. People expect the mine to be active for 35 years, and each year it's expected to generate over $2 billion. But here's the thing. In Thacker Pass, they'll be extracting lithium from clay, and this process has never been done on such a huge scale before. So it's kind of a hit or miss. But if it works, it could completely change the industry. Big question. Who's interested in all this? Well, we've got 3 big companies eyeing the lithium market in the US. First, there's ExxonMobil. The oil giant wants to start producing lithium by 2027, and they have plans to become the top supplier for electric vehicles by 2030. Then there's General Motors, the company behind big car brands like Chevrolet and Cadillac. They're so interested in this business that they agreed to pay $625 million for a 38% stake in Thacker Pass. And finally, Tesla. In 2023, they started building a factory in Texas to process lithium. It's all part of their plan to handle more of their supply chain themselves. Now that you know how important lithium is, you might be wondering, what if we run out? Well, that could happen, since it comes from mining and, just like gold, is a finite resource. But that doesn't mean we'd have to give up smartphones or electric cars. If we ever run out of this metal, we'd probably find new ways to produce batteries. In fact, some experts think thermal batteries could be the next big thing. They store extra energy from renewable resources like wind or solar power, which are very cheap. So they represent a new way of storing energy at a small fraction of the cost. Nowadays, they're primarily used for powering the production of steel, cement, and chemicals. Thermal batteries are also being used to heat and cool large buildings. However, more and more projects are focusing on bringing this technology into private spaces, like houses and apartments. Experts are optimistic that initiatives like these could make thermal batteries as well known as electric batteries, and they might soon become a regular part of our daily lives. Humans are at the top of the food chain, but despite this, some creatures cause us a lot of trouble, and we can't do anything about them. Look at these flies with red eyes and blue-green bodies. These are some farmers' worst nightmare in the United States of America. Meet the New World screwworm flies. These little troublemakers have been munching on livestock from Florida to California for centuries, racking up some serious damage to the agricultural scene. To combat these pesky flies, the U.S. Department of Agriculture dropped a whopping 15 million sterile screwworm larvae from helicopters along the Panama-Colombia border. There's even a factory in Panama cranking out these sterile larvae like it's factory-fresh fruit. This action sounds weird, but it makes a lot of sense. The thing is, female flies only get one shot at mating in their entire lives. So if they happen to mate with a sterile dude, that's it. No offspring, ever. This clever trick means healthy screwworms can't reproduce when surrounded by sterile pals, which keeps their numbers in check. But how do we make these male flies sterile in the first place? Simple. A little radiation zap does the trick. You throw a bunch of flies in a lab, give them a quick spin through an X-ray machine, and then drop them from a helicopter into the wild, where their relatives are hanging out. If screwworms start making a comeback, inspectors hop on ATVs and cruise thousands of miles to hunt down any infected animals and stop the spread. There's no magic trick to wipe out these parasites completely, but the game plan is clear. Keep the sterile fly drops coming and stay one step ahead of these pesky little critters. Do you know why it's too dangerous to move animals from one habitat to another? There's a possibility that they won't encounter predators in the new area and will become an invasive species that will provoke an ecological disaster. Here's a simple example. In the 30s in the 20th century, farmers from Australia faced a serious problem. Cane beetles were spoiling sugarcane in the northern part of the country. Insects devoured a huge amount of the harvest, and people couldn't stop it. They didn't want to spoil the cane with poisonous pesticides, so they brought a group of cane toads from South America in the hope that the toads would eat the pests. But when these toads found themselves in the reed fields, they couldn't reach the bugs, as they lived on tall reeds. The toads just couldn't jump at such height and get the pests. So instead of beetles, they began to eat other insects. Amphibians started multiplying at a tremendous rate. The female cane toad can lay about 30,000 eggs at a time. After 3 days, small tadpoles hatch from the eggs. They swim in the water for 20 weeks, and then turn into grown-up toads that live from 5 to 10 years. Millions of jumping animals began taking over the entire northern part of the continent, destroying all the biodiversity around. Leaves, grass, insects, carrion. Toads ate all this and didn't leave food for other animals. The problem was that the toads turned out to be very hardy creatures. Heat, cold, rain, droughts, they can breed anywhere and nothing can stop them. But what about other animals? Australia is full of alligators, big birds, and other creatures that would love to feast on croaking amphibians. Yes, it's true. But any animal that tried to eat these toads didn't survive. The problem is that cane toads are venomous. There are special glands behind their eyes that produce strong toxins that cause serious health problems in any animal. Some farmers saw birds falling from the sky after they had swallowed these amphibians. More than 80 years have passed since farmers brought 100 cane toads to Australia. Now, there are about 1.5 billion of them. They have already covered 386,000 square miles, which is about the same area as the states of Texas and Oklahoma combined. And so far, scientists and biologists haven't come up with an effective way to deal with them. People tried to catch them, but it was useless. Even if you catch 98 toads out of 100 next to a small pond, the 2 remaining toads can produce 30,000 eggs per night. Nature may be able to restore balance when some animals with immunity to toad toxins appear in Australia. But at the moment, cane toads are unstoppable. How can we stop the uncontrolled population of mosquitoes that are dangerous to humans? The correct answer is to create 735 million genetically modified mosquitoes and mix these 2 groups. All over the world, many species of mosquitoes carry infections that cause serious health problems to humans. Almost no one likes mosquitoes. These buzzing insects prevent us from sleeping, and their bites are incredibly itchy. Many people would probably be happy if these creatures disappeared from the face of the earth. And scientists might have found a way to make this wish come true. Only female mosquitoes bite us because they need food to produce eggs. So, scientists released genetically modified male mosquitoes with a special protein in their bodies. After 2 mosquitoes come into contact, this protein is transmitted from the male to the female and then prevents it from producing offspring. All this happens before the age when females begin to bite. So, females can't create offspring, which means they don't need to bite people and animals anymore. And the more of such proteins scientists spread, the smaller the mosquito population will be. It sounds good, but about 240,000 people have signed a petition to cancel this experiment. Many scientists believe that the disappearance of one insect species can lead to a biological catastrophe. Nature is a complex, balanced system where the slightest change can lead to serious problems. Mosquitoes are a food source for many reptiles and amphibians. The extinction of mosquitoes can trigger the disappearance of many species. It's like a chain reaction of catastrophes, the end of which is unknown. Nevertheless, modified mosquitoes have already been released in Florida, and it seems that nothing terrible has happened. The good news is that people have fewer health problems after that. Moreover, since 2019, about 1.5 billion mosquitoes have been released worldwide. It has saved millions of lives and hasn't disrupted the delicate balance of nature yet. Recently, scientists have released another group of safe mosquitoes in East Africa. Well, let's hope that scientists have everything under control. Invasive species are not always mosquitoes, flies, or amphibians. These can also be large animals, such as feral pigs or super pigs. These pigs are a mix of domestic swine and wild boar. There are already almost 7 million feral hogs in the south of the USA. Thanks to people's efforts, these animals haven't spread to the north yet. But the danger to the northern states comes from Canada. Pigs were brought there in the 80s to support agriculture. But in the early 2000s, wild boars lost their popularity. They just stayed in the wild, and farmers were sure that those animals wouldn't survive the harsh Canadian winter. Oh, how wrong they were. wild pigs turned out to be hardy, mobile, and capable of rapid reproduction. These animals dig and tear up the ground, eat almost everything they come across, and thus take food from other animals. By the way, other creatures can become their lunch too. Wild pigs attack mice, geese, ducks, and some species of deer. They trample crops, grass, and flowers and are not afraid of anything. They're like natural bulldozers. Any farm is in danger of extinction if it's in the path of thousands of super pigs. And people can't do anything with them. The northern states understand that an invasion is imminent, so they're preparing for a long battle. Super pigs love swampy areas with tall grass. Canadian and American farmers will try to drive them into more open areas and fence those places off. The plan is not perfect, but it can slow the pigs down and save some time.
So, since 2000, the world has been hit with more than 1,700 earthquakes with magnitude greater than 5. Many happened around the Ring of Fire, located around the Pacific Ocean. In North America, the biggest threat is the San Andreas Fault Line, which can create an earthquake of a magnitude higher than any other, earning it the spine-tingling nickname, the Big One. The potential destruction of California is a terrifying prospect that could have unimaginable consequences. But the Big One is just the beginning of what's to come. Bad news! Scientists have predicted an earth-shattering event that will occur in 2030. Like it or not, there's a 70% chance that we'll experience the Big One, and it will be an earthquake with a magnitude of 6.7. The San Andreas Fault Line will cause the Big One, but what is scary is that we can't predict it. On the other hand, a massive earthquake occurs every 100 years. This means there's always time to prepare for a natural disaster. If we traveled back in time, we'd see a few significant earthquakes like the ones that wiped out San Francisco and Fort Tajon. Buildings made a long time ago are not quake-proof. They will collapse. Even if they survive, you should not enter them. But buildings are not the most dangerous part. You should watch out for electrical lines and gas pipes. Your hill house might be lovely, but it is extremely unsafe. During quakes, the hill can turn into a massive landslide that will destroy everything in its path. Say goodbye to road trips because all the roads will be ruined. You should have some spare water and food since you won't be able to go to the supermarket. This disaster won't be cheap. It will cost the U.S. around $200 billion to recover from the quake. At least the earthquake will not trigger tsunamis. But there's something that can cause more damage than the Big One. The notorious Cascadia subduction zones start in California and ends up all the way in Vancouver, Canada. The San Andreas Fault Line is nothing compared to this zone. It can wipe the whole coast off the face of the Earth, an example of hyperbole. Subduction zones are tectonic plates forced to be one under the other and constantly pulling apart. One is called the North American Plate and the other is the Juan de Fuca Plate. Zones like these are not to be messed with, since they are terrifying hotspots for earthquake activity and extremely dangerous because they cause massive underwater quakes. But they are underwater, so what can they do to us? Well, they can cause giant tsunamis, flooding cities, and destroying the coastline. Right now, the most active zone is the Ring of Fire. The Cascadia zone might be less active, but it is like a sleeping beast that can wake up and destroy everything in its path, causing a groundbreaking earthquake. The last time all this stress was released was in the year 1700. Unlike the San Andreas quake, this one will cause massive tsunamis and much bigger shocks. Let's hope you'll be camping in an open field at that time, because most buildings and bridges will likely be destroyed. Also, be ready for the aftershocks, as they'll be devastating. Nature won't be spared either. Landslides will change animals' habitats. Even our homes will be changed forever. Luckily, there is a light at the end of the tunnel, and scientists are doing everything they can to ensure our safety. New rules are implemented. Every new building must be able to withstand massive shocks. They're developing modern warning systems, and every new infrastructure must follow strict quake-proof guidelines. The Juan de Fuca and the North American plates are locked together, but they won't stay like that forever. When they unlock, get ready for a massive shake. The closer you are to the epicenter, the more damage you'll experience. But even if you are lucky to be far away, you may still feel the ground shaking for some time. Now, if we compare the Cascadia subduction zone and the San Andreas Fault, we'll see how much more dangerous the Cascadia zone is. In 1994, there was an enormous 6.7 magnitude earthquake in the Northridge area, close to the San Andreas Fault. Sadly, many people didn't make it, and some were injured. Back then, buildings were not strong and earthquake-proof, and many of them were damaged. The Cascadia subduction zone can potentially cause a magnitude 9 earthquake. A magnitude 6 quake has the power of around 44 million pounds of dynamite, but a magnitude 9 has the power of 44 trillion pounds of dynamite. The strongest ever recorded quake was in Chile. Its magnitude measured 9.5, and it destroyed most everything. So let's say you've survived the quake, but the struggle is far from over. Soon after, a massive tsunami will strike, with waves that might reach up to 100 feet in some areas. That's so unlike the San Andreas earthquake, which can't produce any significant waves. So say goodbye to your beautiful garden, since salt water will destroy trees and plants, changing the environment for a period of time. The only positive thing will be you won't need Halloween decorations, because all those dried-out trees will resemble a ghost forest. The combination of waves, quakes, and the sheer size of the area will make this natural disaster much more dangerous than any caused by the San Andreas Fault or the so-called Big One. A quake similar to this happened around 300 years ago. Many more have been recorded in the past 3,500 years, proving that they continually occur every 400 to 600 years. So, technically, we have around 100 to 300 years before the next big one hits. We still have no idea how exactly the Cascadia subduction zone works, because we discovered it in 1970. This zone is super scary because it can cause big earthquakes. It was found by accident when researchers studied the Ring of Fire. They wanted to know if this area had caused any trouble in the past years, and the proof was under their noses. In Washington, there is a horror forest where nothing has been growing for years. When researchers tested the soil, they found a tremendous amount of salt. They put 2 and 2 together and concluded that a massive tsunami had been the reason. Experts still didn't know when the forest was destroyed, but Japan kept records of a gigantic earthquake that had a similar effect. It was the one that happened in the year 1700. There is a 1 in 3 chance that the next one will occur in 2050. You must know how to survive the Canadian earthquakes and make it out unscathed, so listen carefully. Those who live in this area have almost no experience with earthquakes like this one. Surviving the quake is relatively easy, but the tsunami coming afterwards is the real danger. After the shake, find the highest ground and go there. Only bring the essentials, like food and water. Yeah, leave your baseball card collection at home. After the first hit, don't try to go down. Seismologists say that most likely there will be a few more waves, and they have proven this. On the 22nd of May, 1960, seismologist Jerry Eston and his 4 friends went to Hawaii to see an expected tsunami that was to happen around midnight. They set up their gear on Wailuku Bridge with an escape route planned. This bridge had been destroyed in the previous tsunami, but the new one was much taller and better. After midnight, the water was 4 feet above the average level. The second wave hit a half hour after midnight, and the water rose another 9 feet by 1 a.m. The water started going down and dropped by 7 feet, but the horror was far from over. Next, they saw a wave that was around 20 feet tall. This shows us that tsunamis are unpredictable, and we should listen to experts to stay safe.
The floor is lava. Haha, just kidding. But honestly, it's kind of falling apart. You might not feel it yet, but a huge part of North America has already lost 37 miles worth of rock from its foundation. And no, this isn't about earthquakes or giant sinkholes. It's about the continent losing pieces of the very thing that keeps the ground from wobbling around like a bad carnival ride. A team of researchers has just dropped a geological bombshell. Part of North America's ground is thinning out like a very sad, very slow ice cream drip. How do they know? They basically gave Earth a high-tech full-body MRI and created 3D maps showing how rocks once considered indestructible are now melting away into the planet's guts, like an upside-down cheese pizza inside an oven. But to really understand this mess, you first have to meet my old friends, cratons. Cratons are like the roots of the continents. They're thick, tough, and ancient. We're talking billions of years old. These bad boys survived meteor impacts, supervolcanoes, and even the tectonic movement of plates. If the plates got into fistfights, for example, you can bet we would see mountain ranges being born. If they got a divorce, drifting apart from each other, then a whole new ocean would be born. All of these things leave scars on the surface of Earth, but the cratons seem to always remain unfazed, like the cockroaches of geology. And since a craton can basically get punched in the face and feel nothing, scientists always assumed these things were nearly indestructible. But then, a group of researchers took their fancy machines to the test and realized that, wait, the cratons are falling apart? How? Enter the Farallon Plate, a really ancient tectonic plate that started to slide under North America's major plate over 100 million years ago. This is a pretty normal process, actually. It's called subduction, and it's how Earth recycles rocks and keeps itself from overheating. This subduction thing has been happening for so long that, by now, the Farallon is almost 400 miles away from the craton, sitting pretty chill at the lower mantle, weirdly close to the outer core of our planet. But the Farallon has been causing trouble, like that one roommate who moved out but keeps leaving weird stuff in the fridge. You see, as it sinks, it tugs on the bottom of North America's foundation, stretching it out and causing pieces to fall off into the deep mantle. And if that wasn't enough drama, the sinking Farallon has also leaked water and carbon dioxide into the surrounding rocks, making the craton even softer and easier to shred apart. Thanks, Farallon. Very cool of you. By studying hundreds of earthquakes across thousands of monitoring stations, scientists have confirmed the story. Big chunks of continental material are dripping downward, thinning the craton by as much as 37 miles. That's more missing rocks than can fit into a milk carton. Sounds dramatic, right? But don't worry. This is happening at a snail's pace. It'll take millions of years for anything noticeable to happen. Your great-great-great-great few grandkids from the distant future might still be standing on solid ground. But don't get too comfy. This thing may not be an urgent problem, but there's another type of sinking that's happening faster than you can say, "Help." Here's the thing. By 2050, at least 32 major cities in the US, including New York, Baltimore, and Charleston, could be partially underwater. And guess what? This one is mostly our fault. Scientists noticed that since 2007, some cities have been sinking into the ground between 0.04 and 0.08 inches every year. Charleston, in South Carolina, is pulling ahead in the worst way possible, sinking 0.15 inches annually. Sure, these numbers sound tiny and a bit ridiculous, but Charleston is barely 9 feet above sea level. And a little sinking goes a long way when the ocean is breathing down your neck. On really bad flood days, people there have to abandon their cars and basically swim home. This whole phenomenon is called land subsidence. And when you mix sinking land with rising sea levels, you get a disaster cocktail of flooded streets, salty farmland, ghost forests, and a lot of very cranky homeowners. And it doesn't stop with just homes. Infrastructure like bridges, roads, airports, and power plants, all things we rely on daily, are also at risk of serious damage. Flooded electrical grids and sunken highways could cause billions more in economic losses and create major safety hazards for communities. Now, let's be fair. Not everything is humanity's fault. Some of this trouble dates all the way back to the Ice Age. About 12,000 years ago, massive ice sheets covered the northern US. They were heavy, like seriously heavy. The weight pushed the land down, and when the ice melted, the ground didn't just pop back up like a trampoline. Instead, it started playing a weird game of geological seesaw. The places that were squished started rising, and the places that weren't got pulled down. This whole process, called glacial isostatic adjustment, try to say that 3 times fast. But of course, humans found a way to make it worse. Groundwater extraction is a major culprit. Think of it like pulling the stuff out of the mattress. After a while, the whole thing just sags. In places like California's Central Valley, the land is dropping by up to 8 inches a year because we keep pumping out water during droughts. In cities like New York, the problem isn't just water. Skyscrapers themselves are making it worse. Yep, turns out if you stack millions of tons of concrete and steel onto soft ground, it tends to flatten. And in case you're wondering, the total mass of New York City's buildings is around 1.68 trillion pounds. That's about the same as 3.5 million statues of liberty piled up. With so much weight concentrated over a relatively small area, the underlying soils have no choice but to compress over time. And if you thought it couldn't get messier, think again. We've been building dams, which stop rivers from delivering fresh sediment to coastal areas. That sediment is kind of like Mother Nature's way of fluffing the ground back up. Without it, coastal lands are compacting like an old sponge. Plus, when wetlands are drained for agriculture or construction, the peaty soil dries out and collapses. Honestly, it's like the ground just can't catch a break. Scientists also noticed that the areas that used to be lush wetlands are now among the fastest sinking spots in the country, especially along the Gulf Coast. Louisiana, for example, is losing about a football field of land because of this mix of subsidence and rising seas. So what's the end game here for us regular people who just want to live above sea level? Well, it's not looking great. Ghost forests, which are basically drowned woodlands, are popping up. Farmland is turning salty and unusable. And even sunny day flooding, where streets flood without any rain, is becoming a thing. Yikes! Meanwhile, over on the West Coast, California is not exactly winning either. San Francisco and Los Angeles are both sinking, which means that rising sea levels could hit them twice as hard and twice as fast. In some places like the Palos Verdes Peninsula, the ground has been sinking so fast, people over there might as well live like moles. So, is America turning into the next Atlantis? Probably not next week, but without serious action, like cutting back on groundwater pumping and planning smarter cities, at least 500,000 people are in serious danger. And the housing damage could easily rack up a jaw-dropping $109 billion by 2050. In the end, while North America isn't about to sink like a poorly made souffle, it's definitely showing some cracks in the crust. So maybe let's ease up on groundwater pumping, rethink how and where we build, and invest a little more in keeping our feet dry. After all, if the floor really does become lava someday, we're gonna wish we had at least fixed the leaks first.
So it turns out that you can't drive between South America and North America, and there's a simple reason for that. There are no roads connecting the two continents, not even a rudimentary one. Technically, you could try your luck crossing on foot, but let me tell you, that would be a huge mistake. The region that connects the two continents is called the Darien Gap. It stretches across southern Panama's Darien province and the northern part of Colombia. The only land route there is a 60-mile jungle trek. Crossing it can take anywhere from 3 to 10 days. It depends on weather conditions, how much you're carrying, and honestly, just pure luck. Chance plays a big role here, because this isn't some chill, relaxing nature walk. It's a harsh, extreme environment, known for being completely isolated and one of the most dangerous places on Earth. Still, people seem to forget that and go there anyway. Every year, the number of people crossing just keeps growing. In 2014, fewer than 10,000 people crossed the gap. In 2023, that number increased to 520,000. Now, you might be wondering, what are so many people doing in the middle of the two American continents, risking all that danger? Well, that's because the Darien Gap has become a route for refugees migrating to North America. But to get there, they face all kinds of dangers, from insect bites and infections to serious fractures. We're talking about a no-man's land. Since there are no police stations, immigrants must also watch out for thieves. Along the way, they have no choice but to rely on and support each other. Most people start the crossing with at least a tent or tarp, rain boots, water, and some food. But these things get heavy fast, and people normally can't carry enough supplies for the entire journey. At some point, people start drinking river water to avoid dehydration. But the water's full of bacteria and dirt, so it causes intestinal issues. And if things get serious, there's no medical help there. To make this whole scenario even worse, the temperatures are brutal, often hitting over 95 degrees Fahrenheit. Now, a small subset of people who venture through the Darien Gap are hardcore adventurers and travelers looking for a survival experience in the jungle. But this region is no place for a relaxing vacation. A group of tourists who went there in 2023 ended up getting jungle rot, a fungus that affects the feet. The situation got so bad that a woman had to be carried out by the group on the last day because she couldn't walk. No matter how prepared people are for the Darien Gap, in the end, survival mostly comes down to luck. Out there, travelers won't find cities with solid infrastructure where they can crash at a hotel and gear up for the next day. In some spots, they might stumble across basic camps right in the jungle. These camps might offer wooden platforms for tents, bucket showers, toilets, and even plates of chicken and rice. But it all comes at a price. Wi-Fi, for example, might cost $2 an hour, and that seems like a pretty good deal, considering there's no cell phone service on the trail. They pretty much lose all contact with the outside world. Now picture a dense rainforest with steep, muddy terrain. The hiking trail is littered with boulders and tangled with vines, like nature's own tripwires. It climbs sharply over a mountain, becoming a serious challenge even for someone in good physical shape. The area also gets constant heavy rainfall, which can lead to landslides, flash flooding, and extremely muddy conditions. The situation gets so intense that even the t-shirts and faces of those who make the crossing end up covered in mud. They'll also have to cross a lot of fast-moving rivers. A Venezuelan dad who recently went through the area with his 2 kids said their sneakers ripped apart on the very first day. That's how powerful the rivers can be. And they're deep, too. Sometimes the water reaches all the way up to their shoulders. But the dangers in that area aren't recent. For centuries, the Darien Gap was thought to be impossible to cross. The first Europeans who ventured into Latin America saw it as kind of a jungle training school. They totally knew about its dangers, but still, many adventurers tried to make the crossing in the years that followed. In 1854, for example, an expedition disappeared for 49 days in the jungle, battling starvation and exhaustion. Then again, in 1870, a group of 100 men set out to cross it. Even though they were well prepared and carried cutting-edge equipment for the time, they still suffered tremendously during the journey. They had to rely on incredible resilience to survive the challenge. Over the years, people who ventured in often ended up passing away from hunger, thirst, and even drowning in rivers. They also faced the risk of being attacked by dangerous animals like jaguars, white-lipped pecaries, and the fer-de-lance, a fast, irritable snake that is one of the most venomous out there. The area is also swarming with mosquitoes, which can spread serious health problems. Leaning against trees to rest can also be risky. This jungle is full of spiked chunga palm trees, which are covered in long black spines up to 8 inches long. Unfortunately for us, these spines are covered in all sorts of bacteria. Just brush against a chunga, and you could end up with infected wounds. And yet another danger is getting lost in the dense forest and never finding your way back to safety. These days, though, this risk is a lot lower. Some people have mentioned color-coded markers that help guide travelers and keep them from going the wrong way. If they see blue or green fabric tied to trees, it means keep walking. But if they spot red fabric, that's a sign they're going the wrong way and need to turn around quickly. Since there are so many dangers, why not just build a road through the Darien Gap? While it might seem like a good idea, building a road connecting Panama and Colombia isn't really that simple. The Darien Gap has a humid climate, tough terrain, and constant rainfall, which means any attempt to build a functional road would be highly challenging and super expensive. Even though there have been previous attempts to fill in the gap. See, there's a huge road system called the Pan-American Highway, which stretches all the way from Alaska to the southern tip of Argentina. Nowadays, this highway hits a roadblock right at the Darien Gap. But it wasn't supposed to be like this, as the original idea was for the road to go through there. Leaders from Latin American countries tried to make this plan happen in the 70s, and then again in the 90s. But a lot of people were against it, mainly because they wanted to protect the local communities and the rainforest. Since the Darien Gap is mostly untouched by humans, it's one of the most biodiverse places on the planet. It's believed that 1 in 5 species are endemic to the region, meaning they only exist in that specific area, like the Darien pocket gopher and the slatty slender mouse opossum. A road would have really damaged the ecosystem in the area, so the plans were scrapped. Eventually, an alternative was created to travel by sea. At least 2 companies started a ferry service connecting the 2 countries. However, the business wasn't profitable, and they ended up shutting down. Not long ago, Panama decided to close the Darien Gap route. Now they're sealed off with barbed wire fencing. It might just be a matter of time before other routes are created. But if you are an adventurer looking to visit South America, it's probably not best to wait for that. Traveling by plane to Colombia will always be a much safer option.
You rub your eyes, trying to make sense of everything. Perfect circular holes in the bottom of the ocean floor off the coast of Big Sur in California. You have no idea how this happened, even though you're a marine biologist who's been practicing it for years. You go through some of the old records and find out that these holes have been around since the 90s. In 1999, a ship-mounted sonar conducted a survey and found 5,200 of these pockmarks, or large holes over 500 square miles, on the ocean floor. They look like moon craters underwater. You contact your team and get the robot ready to go down and explore the scene and bring back a few samples. You and the team drive to the coast and hop on the boat. You're sitting inside controlling the robot with a joystick. Your teammate sets the robot in the water and drives it down. Everything seems normal near the surface, but as the robot goes lower, the pockmarks start appearing. A bunch of boats swift past you, making you lose your balance and focus. The robot turns on the flashlight so you can see better. But as it goes lower, the resolution is less crisp. It almost reaches the bottom, and the holes are smooth and nearly perfect circular shapes. Some of these holes that were visible in the sonar reading measure more than 30 feet across and 15 feet deep. You show the rest of your teammates the images, and they're shocked. The robot continues swimming, but there appear to be more holes all around. Many of them are too small for the scanner to capture from above. These microdepressions are steep and have sort of tails going in a certain direction. It's possible that the currents underwater played a role in their shape. Everywhere the robot swims, there are new holes all around. After a couple of hours, the robot goes back to the boat with some samples. You take them back to the lab and study them. The robot clearly captures images of human trash, but the samples don't indicate anything alarming for now. Despite the fact that 1/3 of the pockets are filled with trash, there's still no explanation of how they were formed. It's late at night and the rest of your team heads back home. You're passing out in the lab, still trying to find some answers. You wake up the next day, and while cooking breakfast, you get this idea that maybe these holes are gases venting out, which could be harmful to marine life. You quickly get the robot and sail out to the ocean once more. This time, you didn't even think about calling your teammates. You place the robot in the water and get behind the screen to control it. The robot descends to the bottom of the ocean and does a survey. So far, the holes still seem to be covered with trash. But some of the holes have marine life dwelling inside, like fish and seaweed. After much scanning, it doesn't look like they're producing any bubbles, which means there aren't any gases venting out, but you're determined to find them. After a while, you reach one of those large pockmarks, and the robot starts scanning around. You find some bubbles coming from a source, but the robot can't reach it. It swims around trying to find a spot, but nothing. You bring the robot back to the lab and work on it. You attach some mechanical arms on it that can lift things and move them. You bring the robot back down to the same spot, but the bubbles aren't as frequent as before. You use the arms to move some of the trash and find out that the bubbles are being produced by a group of crabs chilling next to a pile of plastic. Bingo! The bad news is, you still don't have a clue why the microdepressions and pockmarks exist. As you try to control the robot to go back to the surface, an octopus wraps its tentacles around it, pulling the robot down. You struggle with the controls and push it to maximum power, but the suctions of the octopus are too strong to break off. It's a game of tug-of-war with the octopus and your robot. It takes the robot under a pile of trash, thinking it's lunch. But you use the arms to maneuver the robot out and swim back to the surface. You go back to the lab even more confused. The robot has collected more samples for you to study. Your eye is glued to your microscope, trying to figure out what's going on, but nothing. You decide to do a carbon dating test to determine how old these holes are. After a while, you check out the results and are even more stunned than before. They show that the holes are around 400,000 years old, so it's likely that human trash wasn't the cause for all this. You pull many all-nighters trying to figure out the truth. You gather your team once more and hold a small press conference about this. You claim that this may be something we should be extremely worried about, but you still can't tell them more than what you know. With all the brain work put together, you find out that the large pockmarks haven't changed or been active for more than 50,000 years. The newer holes were most likely created by human trash settling in the bottom of the ocean floor. The marine life gathered some of this trash like plastics and discarded fishing gear and created homes for themselves. This is why around 4,500 of the holes are newer and have trash in them. But it still doesn't answer why the holes appeared in the first place. You're back to square one. The only way to see what's really going on is to clear up the trash from underwater and study them. The story makes headlines in the local community and catches the attention of a cleanup crew. You organize a trip to the ocean and begin the extraction of all the trash. Many cleanup boats arrive and everyone drops down a net to collect the trash. You send down the robot once more to make sure the nets are hitting the right spot. As most of the trash is being collected, many marine life animals scramble and try to find a way to escape. Everyone makes sure not to hurt them. After a couple of weeks, all the holes are cleared up from the trash. You do another sonar scan from the surface and can see the holes clearer than before. But you still don't have an answer for this. You do some more research trying to see if any other holes appeared around the world. On the other side of the country is a mysterious blue hole off of Florida's Gulf Coast. You catch the nearest flight to Florida and make an appointment with the scientist in charge of the expedition. Blue holes are underwater sinkholes that open below the seabed. Just like on the surface, the underwater world also has sinkholes. This one is called the Green Banana and is 150 feet below, and the hole is 435 feet deep. You dive with some special gear with the rest of the team to a barren ocean floor, and the hole is right there in front of you, looking like an oasis in the desert. You and the rest of the scientists are surprised by the diverse marine life dwelling within. Some sea turtles swim past you, and even sharks. These ones don't harm humans. Halfway through, you reach a narrow path, which makes it difficult for humans to pass through. But everyone is careful. There are corals, sponges, mollusks around the corner. You collect some samples and go back to the lab. Blue holes in general are richer in nutrients than barren lands and host plenty of unique marine life. They're quite common and don't pose any sort of threat to anyone. After making the connections, You don't think the holes off the coast of California have anything to do with blue holes. The mystery goes on.
A man went for a walk not far from Buenos Aires in Argentina and found something that looked like a dinosaur egg lying in the mud. When he shared his find with his family, everyone thought it was a joke, but it was actually very real. Except it wasn't a dinosaur egg, but a glyptodont shell. These guys went extinct thousands of years ago. Some of them grew up to be the size of a small car. The Paleo-Indians, who were the ancestors of Native Americans, must have had a fun time living alongside those beasts. People keep finding similar black scaly shells, which are fossils of glyptodonts in the Americas. These creatures thrived in South America for tens of millions of years and also spread up north. They had thick armor, called a carapace, and tough, grooved teeth for eating grass. They weren't always giant, but it looks like a colder climate before the Ice Age, with open woodlands and plenty of grass, helped them evolve. It's pretty hard to hide when you're huge, so they may have developed their fused armor to protect themselves. One of the most famous types had a long tail with spikes that it used to fight other glyptodonts for territory or mates. Although they look similar, the ancient glyptodonts were really different from today's armadillos. Glyptodonts had a hard, heavy armor made of fused plates, and today's armadillos have flexible armor and can roll up into a ball to protect their soft tummies. Plus, glyptodonts ate grass using their grooved teeth, and armadillos prefer insects for lunch. But despite all the differences, recent studies of their DNA showed that glyptodonts actually belonged to the armadillo family. If you think the glyptodont was scary, just wait till you meet the giant short-faced bear. This bad guy grew to almost twice the height of Michael Jordan when it stood on its hind legs. It also weighed over 1,500 pounds, and it was able to run at the speed of over 40 miles per hour. This bear preferred meat to all other foods. Even its skull and teeth were designed for slicing through meat, and it had forward-facing eyes that gave it sharp vision. Its strong jaws and large muscles helped it crush bones to get to the nutritious marrow inside. The giant short-faced bear lived in places like Minnesota and west of the Mississippi River, all the way up to Alaska. It went after or scavenged big animals like bison, musk oxen, deer, and even ground sloths. But it eventually went extinct because its prey didn't survive the Ice Age. Today, the only living relative of the short-faced bears is the spectacled bear from South America. This guy is much smaller, about the size of a black bear, and it eats both plants and meat. Game of Thrones fans, the next one is for you. The orphaned wolf cubs adopted by the Stark family in the epic series were inspired by dire wolves. Their name translates from Latin as terrible wolf. These great uncles of modern dogs were almost 5 feet from head to tail and weighed around 150 to 200 pounds. The oldest record of the dire wolf is from 250,000 years ago. They adapted well to different conditions and lived pretty much all over North America, from as far north as Alaska to down into southern Mexico. They went extinct around 10,000 years ago, soon after the last Ice Age. They most likely just lost their source of food. The closest we have to dire wolves now is the gray wolf, but don't get too upset. Scientists think they could be able to bring the dire wolf back to life. They can combine intact straps of their DNA, recovered from the museum specimens and the genome of modern dogs. One animal you definitely wouldn't want to be on the de-extinction program is the saber-toothed cat. This bad guy lived in prehistoric North America and parts of South America. And nope, it's not related to modern tigers or other cats. It just went extinct. It had the title of the most fearsome Ice Age predator for a long time, until scientists found out at least one species of it was more like a kitty cat. Smilodon, by the way, Diego from Ice Age was one of those. Could only chomp down with 1/3 of the force of modern lions, but it could open its mouth at a 120 degrees angle. And it could wrestle even large prey to the ground with its powerful body, with disproportionately thick front legs and strong neck. The kitty was probably just too afraid to use its long and narrow teeth that could break easily. And one more detail. It had to have lips that could stretch well for the jaws to open wide, so it most likely drooled like a Saint Bernard. Well, at least their teeth grew twice as fast as those of modern lions, and fully formed by the age of 3. The giant beavers, called castoroids, must have grown at the same rate, or so to get as big as a couch. They were about 8 feet long and weighed 200 pounds, which is as heavy as a large refrigerator. They had huge 6-inch long front teeth for gnawing, a narrow tail, and long, shaggy fur. This giant creature lived alongside mammoths and saber-toothed tigers in the woodlands of North America. Like today's beavers, the giant beaver probably spent a lot of time in the water since it was too heavy to move quickly on land. Unfortunately, we don't know for sure if giant beavers built equally giant dams. Even if they did, none of those structures survived over time. Some people think a giant beaver built a 4-foot-tall dam in Ohio, but it's just a guess. Eventually, the giant beaver disappeared, just like other big animals from the last ice age. Early human settlers in North America may have sped up its extinction, as they probably liked its thick fur and meat. By the Ice Age, mastodons, some remote offsprings of the early elephants from Africa, crossed a land bridge that once connected Siberia and Alaska and made it to North America. Mastodons, like woolly mammoths, had thick, shaggy fur that helped them keep warm in the cold climate of the Ice Age. But unlike the mammoths, who mostly grazed, mastodons were mostly browsers. They like to eat leaves from shrubs and the lower branches of trees. Scientists often find woolly mammoth fossils together, which means they probably lived in groups, like family herds. Mastodon fossils are usually lying alone. This means they may have preferred living on their own and only came together to mate or for a short time with their young. Sadly, both mastodons and woolly mammoths went extinct around 11,000 years ago, not long after the Ice Age. Scientists think this may have happened because of changes in weather patterns, fewer food sources, and possibly early humans. They figured out that one mastodon could feed a tribe for a week and dress them for years. You can mostly find camels in deserts in places like North Africa and the Middle East now. But scientists believe they actually came from North America, especially the lands west of the Mississippi River. Fossils show that camels appeared on Earth about 44 million years ago. In 2015, a team of scientists from the University of Louisiana discovered the bones of a giant ancient camel in Oregon. This camel was between 12 and 14 feet tall, like a modern giraffe. It lived around 7 million years ago and had a long neck to help it reach high plants. About 6 million years ago, some early camels crossed into Asia over the Bering Strait land bridge. Once they arrived in Asia, these camels split into 2 types we know today: the Bactrian camel with 2 humps and the dromedary camel with 1 hump. You won't find wild camels in North America anymore, but some of their relatives, such as llamas, alpacas, and guanacos, still live in South America.
Imagine sitting at home, drinking coffee, and watching a new episode of your favorite series, and suddenly, boom, crash! What's happened? Nothing terrible, just a meteorite that has just crashed into your kitchen after breaking the roof. You might think this story is entirely made up. But that's what actually happened in New Jersey during the Eta Aquarid meteor shower, which is active from April 19th to May 28th and peaking on May 5th through 6th. The space rock itself was the size of a pork roll sandwich. It was also pitch black and weighed almost 4 pounds. It slammed through the roof and hit the wooden floor, ruining it. When the inhabitants of the house found the rock and touched it, it was still warm. Luckily, the thing wasn't radioactive and there was no one at home at the time this intruder arrived. But the most shocking thing about this meteorite? Astronomers believe it might have come from a cosmic snowball traveling far, far away from Earth. To explain this, I'll have to tell you a bit more about the Eta Aquarid. This meteor shower is famous for its fast meteors, leaving long, glowing trails. It's produced by Comet Halley, completing its orbit around the Sun every 76 years. The comet hasn't visited Earth since 1986 and won't come back until 2061. Right now, it's somewhere near the constellation of Hydra, which is more than 100 light-years away from our planet. Every year, Earth has to pass through trails of debris left by the comet. They collide with our atmosphere, disintegrate, and create beautiful, colorful streaks in the night sky. And it happens every time Halley returns to the inner solar system. Its nucleus sheds a layer of ice and rock into space, and some of it reaches our planet. The Central New Jersey authorities believe the meteorite that sneaked into the house originated from that meteor shower. But I feel that you might be pondering another question that confuses many people. What's the difference between all those space bodies? I mean, there are so many of them flying out there. Meteors, meteorites, asteroids, comets. Ugh. Okay, let's figure it out together. An asteroid is a rocky body orbiting the sun. It's usually not very big and quite inactive. Comets are different. They're covered with ice that normally evaporates in sunlight, forming a coma, which is what a comet's atmosphere is called. This coma consists of dust and gas. A comet also has a tail that is made of dust and/or gas too. A meteoroid is a small part of a comet or asteroid that orbits the sun. If this meteoroid manages to sneak into Earth's atmosphere and vaporize there, it's a meteor. It's often called a shooting star. And finally, if a meteoroid manages to survive the passage through our planet's atmosphere and lands on Earth's surface, it becomes a meteorite. If you think such space guests are a rare occurrence, that's not exactly true. Every day, our planet is hit with more than 100 tons of sand-sized particles. About once a year, a large, car-sized asteroid enters Earth's atmosphere, turns into an impressive fireball and burns, luckily, before reaching the surface of the planet. And every 2,000 years or so, a meteoroid the size of a soccer field hits Earth, causing a lot of damage. And now, imagine this. A huge, really ginormous asteroid is approaching our planet. There's no one on Earth to predict its appearance. Neither is there anyone to stop it. That's why soon, the asteroid crashes into the surface of Earth. The force of the collision is so powerful that the space visitor doesn't stop until it gets through the crust to a depth of several miles. The impact leaves a crater of more than 100 miles across. Thousands of cubic miles of solid rock instantly turn into vapor. The crash sets off a series of natural disasters that erase 75% of life on Earth. The creatures that were close enough to see the crash don't survive for longer than a few seconds. Even closer to the impact crater, the ground is covered with thousands of feet of hot ash, grit, and rubble. Several seconds later, everything for many miles around bursts into flames. What doesn't burn down within the next several minutes after the collision faces a different, even more terrifying fate. The asteroid causes a monstrous, largest ever tsunami. A recent study claims that it was thousands of times more powerful than any wave people have ever seen. The tsunami was so devastating, it eroded seafloor sediments half a world away. The team of scientists even remodeled the events of the first 10 minutes after the impact, and the model showed that the asteroid had produced waves up to 30,000 times greater than one of the largest tsunamis people have ever recorded, the one in the Indian Ocean in 2004. You've probably already guessed that I'm talking about a real-life event, namely the asteroid collision that wiped dinosaurs off the face of the Earth. The Chicxulub asteroid, as we now know it, is believed to come from the outer reaches of the solar system. This space body was at least 6 miles across. It crashed into the shallow seawaters near the Yucatan Peninsula. The impact was so powerful that it left its signature on the face of the planet. In 2021, researchers found out that the collision had carved mega ripples into Earth's crust in the region of modern-day central Louisiana. But such devastating events, when an object that large threatens Earth's inhabitants, happen very rarely, once every few million years. Space rocks smaller than 80 feet usually burn up in the atmosphere of our planet, causing little to no damage. If a rocky meteoroid larger than 80 feet but smaller than half a mile across was to hit Earth, it would cause local damage to the impact area. As for a space rock with a diameter larger than half a mile, it'd likely have worldwide effects. And these space bodies aren't even the largest. For comparison, asteroids populating the main asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter can be as huge as 580 miles across. But you can breathe out. They're too far away. and don't pose any threat to our planet. All the time, our scientists keep learning more and more about hazardous asteroids and comets. They have even established a Planetary Defense Coordination Office, aka PDCO. It ensures that potentially hazardous objects get detected as early as possible. An object is considered potentially hazardous if its orbit is predicted to bring it within 5 million miles of Earth. It should also be large enough to reach the surface of our planet, over 100 feet across. Interestingly, a meteorite impact isn't the worst thing you need to worry about. Some scientists warn that the most dangerous thing is the shock wave produced by a meteor breaking apart in the atmosphere. For example, one meteor, which originally was an asteroid the size of a 6-story building, entered our planet's atmosphere in February 2013 and broke apart 15 miles above the ground. This generated a shock wave that was equivalent to a ginormous explosion. An even larger space visitor was called the Tunguska meteorite. It was also 10 times more energetic. It broke into pieces over the Tunguska River in June 1908, flattening 500,000 acres of forest. If the meteorite hadn't been so huge, this event would have gone undetected because of the remote location where it all happened. So it's a good thing that 90 to 95% of meteors don't survive the fall through our planet's atmosphere. Only those that are made of stronger materials make it so far. Most meteorites, though, are thought to come from comets, which are way more fragile than asteroids. We should also consider the speed of a meteor. If one is approaching Earth at a slower speed, it's more likely to survive the collision with the atmosphere of our planet. It means that the meteor won't burn completely, and some of its remains will reach the ground. The authorities in a town in northwestern Poland decided to build an observation tower in a public park. Nothing special about that, right? It wasn't until a local archaeologist started digging. It seemed that he had found remains of a fort, but not just any fort. The legendary Jomsborg, or as people also call it, the Viking medieval New York. It's not unusual for Viking finds to pop up in this area. Archaeologists have suspected for a long time that the Polish island near Germany could be the site of the legendary city, and the locals believe in this too. Every year they hold the continent's biggest Viking festival there. People dress up and reenact the Vikings' way of life. The time period I'm talking about is the 10th century. Scholars believe Jomsborg thrived back then, if it was even real, and that's a big if. The mystery has been going on for more than half a millennium. The two most important questions troubling historians are whether the Viking stronghold was real and where it was located. The first historical records that mention the town can be traced back to the 12th century. Recently, a golden disc appeared in Sweden. It contained the names of Jomsborg and Harold Bluetooth. Does the man's last name sound familiar? That's because the Bluetooth technology we use today was named after him. He was a Danish king who apparently ruled over Jomsborg as well, and historians know he lived in the 10th century, right around the time the Viking legendary city reached its peak. All the historical sources we have lack one thing: the city's exact location. Ancient texts describe Jomsborg as a vibrant trading post that grew around a fortress. It had thousands of residents and a pier for ships to dock. This settlement should be somewhere along the southern coast of the Baltic Sea. Just the Polish section of the coastline is more than 4 times longer than the Grand Canyon. The city could be anywhere within the medieval Wendland. Today, this region is split between Germany and Poland, and it's called Pomerania. Luckily for archaeology buffs, there are clues. The Polish city with the newly discovered fort lies near a lagoon. According to ancient sources, the legendary city had room for hundreds of ships. Sagas put the total number of vessels at 360. These are Old Norse epics in prose. A lagoon is the perfect place to moor a large fleet. The waters here are calm. There are no big waves like in the open sea. Speaking of the sea, some historians believe that the city now lies underwater. According to them, the site was located off the northwest coast of Eustom Island. Today, this area is submerged under the Baltic Sea. Let's say Jomsborg really existed. Who lived there? The name of the inhabitants is not very imaginative: Jomsvikings. These people are just as mysterious as their fabled city. They are mentioned in sagas and legends. And there are a couple of rune stones, those are raised stones with runic letters, that mention battles they took part in. Runes were a writing system used by Germanic peoples, including the Vikings, before they adopted the Latin script. And that's pretty much it. There's no hard archaeological evidence that would prove Jomsvikings ever existed. If these myths and legends turn out to be true, then Jomsborg really resembled New York. All nationalities with historical ties to the region lived there: Germans, Slavs, and Vikings. Now, keep in mind that a Viking wasn't a nationality but more of a profession. The hotspot of Viking activity was present-day Sweden and Denmark. A lot of Vikings had Scandinavian origins, but not all of them. In terms of genes, they were a mixed bunch. Scientists even found evidence that some Vikings came from southern Europe, but none of them wore those helmets with horns. We owe that image to 19th century operas. The real Vikings had simple iron helmets with a prominent nose guard. The Jomsvikings were sort of a brotherhood, and in any tight-knit community, members had to obey certain rules. One of them stated that you had to be brave. This meant that if your opponent is not bigger than you and didn't have better fighting tools, you weren't allowed to flee the scene. Sounds a bit far-fetched, but this was an actual Viking rule of conduct. Also, Vikings could leave the city for only 3 days. Any longer, absence required permission from the elders, and they wouldn't allow you to have a conflict with anyone from the Brotherhood. Forgive and forget seemed to have been the Jomsvikings' motto. These rules sound fair, but Jomsborg didn't last long. It only existed for some 85 years. That's the length of the average lifespan in the European Union today. Basically, one human generation. In fact, the whole Viking Age lasted shortly, just over 2 centuries in total. But this was long enough to create the legend of the Norsemen. They are all over our popular culture. There was a TV show, Vikings, and the movie, The Northman. Even the animated movie How to Train Your Dragon had a little Viking as the main hero. And most of them mention a place from Norse mythology, Valhalla. Now, if Jomsborg is semi-legendary, Valhalla is 100% fiction. It is the Hall of Fallen Warriors. Remember how the Jomsvikings had to honor a code of behavior? They did so in the hope of earning their place in Valhalla. This was a splendid place. The people there feast on boar meat every day, under a roof made of shields. Every Viking's dream, right? That's not all. They get into scrimmages with each other on a daily basis. But what exactly motivated the Vikings to take up a life of seafaring? There is no simple answer, but this seems to be a rags to riches story. Scandinavian people traded fur with other European nations. From them, they found out about the riches that lay to the south of their homeland. And they also knew that European leaders didn't always get along well with each other. So why not take advantage of this and earn extra cash on the side? The Vikings' motivation seems pretty modern. The very first raid was carried out by Norwegian Vikings. They sailed across the North Sea to northeast England. Europeans were shocked by the boldness of these raiders from the north. The Viking Age was about to begin. The Norsemen soon realized that European nations were ready to pay a hefty sum to avoid their visits. At the beginning of the 11th century, the English paid the Vikings more than $300,000 in today's money to leave them alone. There was even a special word for this tax. The influx of all this wealth made the Vikings' appetite only grow bigger. But this was all about to change in 1066, possibly the most important date in English history. That year, the last great Viking king went to England. However, he couldn't find victory at Stamford Bridge. Yes, the place where the Chelsea Football Club plays its matches today. After the Norwegian king lost, the number of raids decreased. The Europeans were better equipped to defend themselves. The Viking Age slowly came to an end. But this didn't mean that the Vikings were gone forever. They stayed in Iceland for 400 years. The island was largely uninhabited before they came in the 9th century. And in England, the Vikings left their trace in place names. Every town that ends in "by" was first settled by these Scandinavians. There are around 2,000 place names across Great Britain and Ireland that can be linked to the Vikings. And can you guess which part of France has the most Viking-related toponyms? The name says it all: Normandy. The mouth of the River Seine is where most Danish Vikings settled in the 9th century. From there, they sent several raiding parties to Paris itself.